ScultGL is a free program. It runs in your web browser, so it's not actually on your computer, so it works from any computer. This is a sculpting program that makes you feel like you're using a ball of clay. So that's what this looks like. It looks like just a ball of clay that we're going to turn into a monster. You'll notice that on the right hand side we have a set of menus such as rendering, topology, sculpting, and painting. I'm going to show you how to use the sculpting and painting menu items. At the top we also have a menu bar that has files, scene, history, etc. I will show you a few of these. I won't be showing you the entire program. That would take much longer than just an hour, but after this tutorial you should have enough knowledge that you can come back to the program and you can try things out for yourself. There is a very handy help file online if you click on the About and Help, and that will answer most of your questions. So first let's learn how to use the program. So under Files you'll see all sorts of things such as Add has different types of files. It also has Export, Save. These are very important. We are going to concentrate on the Save SGL, which is the file that is used only in SculptGL. We will also be looking at the Save STL, which is what we will use for 3D printing. Under Scene, we are going to be looking at things like Clear Scene, adding different shapes, and we're also going to look at the Copy Selection, Delete Selection, and soon there will also be another option there for merging, and I will show you that as well. If you hold down the right mouse button, you can do what's called orbit, and this is what this is. It's looking around your object. Your mouse wheel will, if you scroll it backwards or forwards, will let you zoom in and out. If you're using a trackpad, it's usually 2 fingers on the trackpad. And if you use the left mouse button, that is what you're going to use to sculpt. So right now we're using the brush tool, and you can see that the brush tool is bringing the clay a little bit up, so it looks like I have a little face here. And I had mentioned this symmetry option as well. So symmetry is going to draw on one side of your object the exact same thing as where you were drawing. So you can see with the face, I have two eyes, a mouth, and a nose, and everything is perfectly symmetrical. That's because of the symmetry option. You can decide where that line of symmetry is so that you can have the symmetry exactly where you want it. You can even turn it off. And by turning it off, you can draw something on one side of your object and not have it draw on the other. And here we are orbiting the object and drawing all sorts of different things. It kind of looks like a face with angry eyebrows and hair. So let's go into looking at different shapes. So in our different shapes, you can see that we have a sphere, a cube, cylinder, and a torus. A torus is kind of like a donut. Let's look at the orbit tool. So holding in your right mouse button, you can move the object all around, and that orbits it. You can use the scene option to darken your outside rim, if that makes it easier for you to see while you orbit. And you can get rid of that grid if you don't like the grid. I like it, so I keep it on there. You can also show the mirror line. The mirror line is where your symmetry offset is. You'll also notice when you're drawing that there will be a little red dot on each side of that line, and that shows you where the object is going to start drawing. So there you go. You can see the 2 red dots. So we're going to clear the scene. Let's get rid of that. And let's add the sphere again. We're going to look at the brush tool. So the brush tool is going to raise your clay a little bit As long as you don't have the negative box checked, you'll see on the right hand side under intensity it has a negative box, so make sure that that's not checked. If you want to have a bigger brush, change your radius, and then you can have a larger or a smaller brush. And then if you're wanting to have it use more or less clay, you can also use the intensity option. So here you can see the negative actually takes away the clay instead of raising it up. So it works almost like the crease function, but just a little bit different. Let's make that radius a little bit bigger so you can see a little bit more. There you go. Kind of drilling a hole in the clay, like I'm pressing my thumb into a big ball of clay. Let's look at the Inflate tool. So the Inflate tool will do exactly as it suggests. It's like you're inflating the object with air underneath, kind of raising it up. So a little bit different than the brush tool. Let's look at the Twist tool. So the Twist tool is going to twist your clay. So it's kind of like making a swirl. And the Smooth tool. Smooth tool is going to smooth down those edges just so that they don't look so ragged. You can see that it looks like it's blending it in a little bit more. And the Flatten tool. So the Flatten tool works kind of like the smoothing tool, except that it pushes it in a little bit, so it flattens it. So you can use this if you want to try to make a flat edge on something. And the Pinch tool. So I think we all know what pinching is, you know, taking two fingers and squeezing them together over something. This kind of works that same way. And the Crease tool. So the Crease tool basically cuts a little crease. So kind of like the brush tool when we had the negative option turned on. And the Drag tool. So dragging tool is like you're grabbing a piece of the clay and you're pulling it and dragging it. And the Paint tool. So if you're not 3D printing and you want to make your object a little bit more colorful, then you can use this to color it. If you are setting this up for 3D printing at the library, you won't want to color it, because when you have an object that has a whole bunch of different colors in it, when you try to import that into something like Cura for slicing, sometimes the slicer can miss edges and portions of it. So I do not recommend painting it if you're going to 3D print it at the library. But if you're just doing this for fun, then why not? And the Move tool. So the Move tool works kind of like the Drag tool. You are going to grab a portion of your clay and you're just going to move it. The Transform tool. So sometimes you might want to move your object or resize your object. Even this transforms it completely. Here I am rotating it. So what you'll notice on here is that there are circles, there are arrows, and there are boxes. So the circles are going to be used to rotate your object. The arrows are used to move your object, and the boxes are used to resize your object. So to do any of those, you want to make sure that you're hovering your mouse over the correct one. You want to hold down your left mouse button and then just move your mouse. Now let's make a monster. Since you're a master of all the tools, we are going to create what's called a Spectator. So this is from the game Dungeons & Dragons. This is off of the website dndbeyond.com. And if you play D&D, this is a really good website, and we actually have a tutorial of it on our YouTube as well. So the Spectator looks like this. And you can see all the different tools that we are going to try and use to create this. So here we are with our ball of clay. So first what I've done is I have turned off symmetry. So I hold down my left mouse button and then I draw my crease. I'm going to try and draw an eye. I think this kind of looks like an eye a little bit. I'm going to orbit using my right mouse button, holding it in. I'm going to transform this a little bit and resize it because this is a perfect ball shape, and if I remember the drawing, it wasn't exactly ball shaped, it was more of an oval. So here we go. This is more of an oval, and again I'm using my left mouse button on the boxes, trying to get that correct. I'm orbiting around because I think I made it kind of flat, but here I'm going to bring this down a little bit first. Alright, so let's go back to the crease and let's finish the eye. I can always adjust the shape of it a little bit later if I realize that it's not quite what I want. And remember, at any point if you make a mistake, Control or Command Z, depending if you're using a Windows or a Mac machine. I am actually running this on a Linux, and Linux is also Control Z to undo if you want to undo your last action. So I think now I'm going to use the brush function, because if you remember on the picture, the eye was really kind of pronounced. That's kind of the whole point, I think, of the Dungeons and Dragons beholders is they're just kind of a giant eyeball. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of flatten this in here, and I'm not going to worry too much about the fact that it doesn't look great, because I can use the smoothing tool to make that look a little bit better. So remember also to zoom in and out, it's your middle scroll wheel, or it's if you're using a trackpad, it's your two fingers up and down. And to do that with the brush tool, I had the negative function turned on. So now I'm using the smooth tool, as I had mentioned before. I'm smoothing it out so it just looks a little bit better. I'm going to go really small with my radius just so I can get into those little tiny corners and still keep the shape of this eye. Okay, and then I'm going to use the Crease tool again, just so that I can get that eyeball really pronounced. So I'd really draw around it, and then I'm going to draw around the outer edge of the eye too, just like this. I feel like I should have some really nice clouds in the background, and maybe a mountain setting with some trees. Alright, so let's try the Inflate tool. So the Inflate tool I'm going to use to try to create those ridges that kind of looked like, almost like horns. Bring up the intensity a little bit. And yeah, there we go. So you can see it almost looks like the brush tool, but it inflates it a little bit more than the brush tool. So I'm just going to go over it back and forth, really trying hard not to make this look like eyelashes, because this is supposed to be a monster. He should be scary. So if you've ever read Leonardo the Terrible Monster by Mo Willems, this is kind of what I'm thinking of here. I've got Leonardo who's trying to be really scary, but unfortunately every time I draw him he keeps looking really cute. Okay, here we go. We've got the it looks. Yeah, it's really turning out to look like eyelashes. I might have to just deal with the fact that I'm creating a very friendly monster here. Kind of like Grover, the monster at the end of this book, if you remember that, where he's told her not to go to the end of the book because there's a monster. So you'll notice that I've kind of have made this disc shaped. So I'm going back to transform just so I can make it a little bit more of an oval. Okay, so that square there, the blue one, is the one that's resizing it, and the yellow box there too. Okay, there we go. That looks a little bit better. Now I'm going to drag. That's way too big of a radius, so I'm going to bring that down. There we are. And I'm going to see if I can drag this to make it look like horns, but I have a feeling I think this is going to wind up looking like eyelashes. This is a little bit hard to do because you have to have that right angle to really get the effect that you want. So again, Control Z, there we go. I can redo. Oh, okay, here we go. I think this is looking more like, well, maybe not more like horns. I think, yeah, I'm definitely making eyelashes here. Yeah, this is looking like eyelashes. Hopefully you are better at making horns than I am. I think if I have just maybe just different angle here. Okay. I might be able to salvage this and make it look like horns by maybe making that ridge behind the eyelashes a little bit bigger. So let's see here. I'm just gonna drag this clay up a little bit more here. Definitely looking like eyelashes. But I mean, it is an eye monster, so it would make sense that it would have eyelashes. And I think if I just make them really spiky everywhere, that might make it look more monstrous. Maybe not. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually make the mouth with this sphere. So first I'm going to make it smaller using those red, green, and yellow boxes, and a little bit at a time to try to keep the proportion. And then once I have it kind of like this, I'm going to move it over and try to figure out exactly where I want the mouth. And yeah, maybe like this here. And then I can also resize it. And you'll notice that there's a different color between the two spheres. So I want to make sure that I'm on the right object when I'm using the tools, so that I don't accidentally wreck something that I've spent time creating. So this seems to be pretty good right here. Let's go back to the brush tool. And I'm going to try drawing my mouth. Again, I've got symmetry off. And I've got negative on. So here's my jaw. And I'm going to just use that negative brush tool, maybe a little bit bigger of a radius. And then I'm going to try to just go into it to give it a sort of a cavernous look, so it looks like a mouth. And you can see it kind of disappearing, and the other object is appearing underneath. So then select the other object, and I can take away from that. And there we go. And yeah, sure, this looks not too bad. There. And then using the brush tool with the negative option taken off, I am going to use the brush tool to try to create kind of lips. There. Kind of looks okay. I think I'm going to call my monster George. So I'm going to try to fix the I'm going to try to fix these eyelashes a little bit, just so it doesn't look like eyelashes. I think I can make these look a little bit more like horns, and really like sort of a bone ridge on top here. So using the brush tool again, negative is turned off, no symmetry, and went into the eye a little bit. Control Z gets rid of that. Maybe here, if I use the brush tool on the edge of what looks like eyelashes, that'll make it look more like horns. Using the brush tool, just trying out a little bit at a time. If you ever make a mistake, again, just Control Z takes it away, so might as well just attempt to try to make this look a little bit like, a little bit less like eyelashes. So I think if I put a little bit of clay behind here, this will give it a little bit more of a ridge look. That's already looking better. It does look a little bit jagged. That is one thing that I'm noticing. So I think what I might wind up doing is a little bit later on using the smooth tool to smooth that down a little bit. But right now it's not too bad. So I'm just gonna brush this up. Here we go. Always orbiting around to try to get the ideal angle of it, because depending upon your angle, you're going to get different results. And I am still noticing that he's very flat. George is not wide enough, really. Almost perfect, though. But I'm going to deal with that later on. So the smooth tool is going to smooth out those rough edges, make it look a little bit more ridgy than eyelashy. So yeah, it's getting a little bit better. Still not really scary, but you know, maybe George is a reformed monster and he's actually one of the good guys. Go back to the brush tool, and I'm just going to brush inside of the eyeball a little bit, just to, or the eye socket actually. And I'm just going to make the eye socket look a little bit smoother as well, build it up a little bit. Remember before I'd use the negative option with the brush, now I'm not, I'm just using the brush. I think this is working out quite a bit better. And one of the things that we could do, if you notice, I've brushed down quite a bit, and now you're seeing the second sphere poking through. If I wanted to, I could actually merge the two spheres into one object. And to do that, I would go under Scene, and then I would use the merge option. But for me, I like having them separate. It just makes it easier to work on. If I do make a mistake, I can get rid of the second sphere completely, start again. I'm not having to redo an entire object. And I'm going to use the Crease tool to try and pronounce that eyeball just a little bit more so that it's really definite. So when I paint it after I 3D print it, it's going to just look a little bit nicer painted. And then just go back and forth between brush and smooth and crease and work on it a little bit at a time. Try and get it so that it's exactly as you want it. And if you remember, I had said that I wanted to make the mouth look a little bit more menacing. This is definitely not menacing. He kind of looks like he's screaming for help. I think what I want to do is give the mouth some teeth. And also the tongue too, because if you remember on that picture, the Spectator had this tongue. So I'm going to try that as well. So every once in a while you do want to save your file. And I'm going to save it as an SGL file, which is specific to this program, so you wouldn't be able to open it up in other programs. And I probably should have been saving way earlier than this. Save, just like you would with any document. You want to save a little bit at a time so that if you do, your computer crashes or something, you don't lose everything. Even though this is on a website, if your browser crashes or anything like that, you will lose all your work. The website does not save anything. So this will save it directly to your computer, so then you can reload it later. Okay, so orbiting around again. I'm going to go to the drag tool, and so the drag tool is actually what I'm going to use to make the tongue. So I'm just going to drag it out, try and get it so it looks kind of like that tongue. It's not too bad. There we go. See if I can maybe get a different angle on it. I kind of like it. So now I'm going to go to the smooth tool. And I'm just going to smooth this down so that it doesn't look again, so it doesn't look so jagged. Maybe so that it doesn't look like it's protruding through the lip too. So go back to the brush tool here, and I think that's going to work. So basically, brush tool, negative feature on. Take away some of the clay. Make sure that the proper object is highlighted. So if you highlight the wrong object, it's going to take away the wrong amount of clay. So this is going to make it look a little bit less like it's coming through the lip by doing this. It's a little bit better. And take off the negative features, so now positive is on, and I'm adding clay, and I'm going to make it so that it looks like the lip is coming around. And again, just a little bit at a time. That's what's the best way to do it. If you make a mistake, Control Z, Command Z if you're using a Mac. That's not, yeah. I think it looks, George is starting to look a little bit frightening, sure, in a very friendly way. Going back to the drag tool, I'm going to try to make teeth. These are a little hard to do, kind of like the eyelashes. Well, not eyelashes, the bone ridge. We're not supposed to be eyelashes. You have to have that right angle, and this isn't quite working the way that I would like it to work. But I think for a lower jaw, that's not too bad. It kind of looks little sharp teeth. I'll try it on the upper jaw and see if this works. And if it doesn't work, actually I have another idea for what we could do, because I don't know that this is really working the way that I want it to. Thankfully, Control Z allows me to start again. Maybe if I increase the radius, try that. Can't quite grab the clay in the right direction that I want. There, maybe that's the right angle. Nope, not the right angle. Okay, I'm going to Control Z those upper teeth away. And I'm going to try something else. So I'm going to actually add a cube. And I think I'm going to turn the cube into teeth. So first, just add the cube. It's going to appear over your object. So you need to move the cube. And to do that, we use the transform. And then grab those arrows. The arrows are what's going to move it. Remember, the boxes resize it. The arrows move it. So the red arrow moved it to the right. And now the boxes are resizing. So my green, blue, and red boxes. And sometimes if you grab the wrong thing, you might rotate it, just Control Z, or in this case, actually, I don't think it'll matter if it's rotated by accident. And this looks like it's, yeah, there we go. That's going to be my tooth. And I'm going to move it over, see if I can get it to where the jaw is. This can be a little bit tricky because sometimes in the 3D realm on a 2D screen, it's hard to see, or tell rather, where you are exactly. So I just go a little bit at a time and then I orbit around the object to try to get it perfect. Go down. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Yeah. George has a tooth. It's a square tooth, but it's a tooth. And I can make it unsquare. So now what I'm going to do is add a second tooth, but I'm going to actually copy this tooth. Instead of adding another cylinder, I'm going to copy that tooth. So if whatever is kind of highlighted is what is going to be copied. But let's actually, before we copy, let's make this look more like a tooth. So I'm going to go to the brush tool, negative is turned on. Make sure that's the tooth is highlighted. And then I'm just going to chip away at the corners. Make it look like it's kind of pointy. Little bit at a time. I'm not going to go too quickly. And because I copied that one tooth, there's a second tooth underneath. So I'm going to move that second tooth over. And go up. And up. Get into position. Copy it again. And the only thing that I don't really like here is that all the teeth now, because I've copied them, all look exactly the same. So I think I am going to make them all look a little bit different. I'll resize them. Now I'm going to go back to the brush tool, negative turned on. Try and get that corner, not hit the wrong piece of clay. And I don't have to worry about the back of the tooth too much because after you 3D print it, you're not going to see the back of the tooth. So that's not going to really matter. So I'm just going to shape this tooth like this. And these are going to be really tiny when I 3D print it because I'm not going to 3D print this guy very big. So I don't really have to worry too much of how perfect these things look. If I was making a really big model, I might want to put a little bit more effort into making it look more toothy. There we go. George does not brush his teeth. That is very clear. That could be the story of George. George discovers dentistry. Gonna resize him a little bit, just so he looks a little bit better. I move the mouth a little bit. Okay, so now let's go to the drag tool to make those eye stalks. So I'm just going to pull, and then getting the right angle on this is pretty important because I don't want these to look like ponytails. I want these to look like kind of like tentacles, like almost like an octopus, but with eyes on the end instead of suction cups. So when I use a drag tool, it gets smaller and smaller as I go out. But I have kind of an idea of what I'm going to do to try to fix that as well. And there were 4. That one looks really thin. I'm going to try to make it a little bit thicker. That did not work. Nope, definitely did not work. Control Z. Oops. Control Z. There we go. A little bit better. Aha. That's a really big one. Worked a little too well. Nope. Nope. There. Maybe. Now that we have the eye stalks kind of the way that we want them, we're going to use the brush tool to try and make them a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to have make sure the negative feature is not turned on. I'm going to increase the intensity, and I'm just going to try adding to all the eye stalks, and even around the base, just to make it so that it looks, so that's not just like pulling out of it. It looks like it's actually almost like a shoulder on each of the eye stalks, going all over it to make it a little bit thicker. And this will also assist in 3D printing it, because if you try to 3D print something that's too thin or too small, it's just not going to work. I can see that eye stalk in the back there. It's definitely not going to 3D print properly, but I can fix it. So just make it a little bit thicker with the brush. You can see clay being added to it. There we go, that's a little bit better. And you can also see those two little bumps. That's because I forgot to turn off symmetry at one point. So I just undo and try redoing it. I'm gonna zoom right in, turn off symmetry this time, and now I'll add to it. There, that's much better. Try and get rid of that little piece there. So it looks more like a flipper from a fish than it does an eye stalk from a beholder. There. And again, just a little bit at a time. Going slow. Try different tools and see if they get you the results that you want. Smooth tool, just gonna smooth it down, try to get rid of all those parts of it that look really jagged. Don't know if I'm necessarily making it better, but wait, there we go. That's what I want. There. That looks like a good scary eye stalk. Yep, that's much better. Oh yeah, much better. I'm sure George would be very happy with that. So good, using the inflate tool again. I'm gonna try that. Inflate it. And then switch from that to brush, to smooth. And using those three tools, that's gonna make my eye stalk look like an eye stalk. There. That one's kind of just right jetting out. It looks like it's been impaled more than an actual eye stalk. So I'm gonna use the drag tool again just to see if I can drag it so it's like curving a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna try the twist tool and see if that can fix this. Well, kind of. I think that's about, yeah, I'm gonna twist them all actually. I think the twist tool worked quite nicely. There. Yeah, that makes them look a little bit more natural. Even gonna twist at the joint. Ooh. I'm gonna use the drag tool and try and make sort of a bone ridge down the side of George's head here, just so that he doesn't look so much like a tennis ball, or an egg. Actually, it looks more like an egg than a tennis ball. And again, it's a matter of getting that right angle to try and get the ridge up. You can see the twist tool made kind of kind of a crater in the side of his head too. So there, I think that's a good angle right there. Just gonna bring this up nice and close to each other so that it looks like a bone ridge, just like in the picture. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And then there are a few other things that we can do too to try and make him look a little bit less like an egg. So if I use the brush tool and I go along that ridge, and then I'm going to do this on both sides and right down, and switch from brush to drag. It almost looks like he's got hair and he looks like one of the Beatles. So I'm going to try to fix that. Yeah, that's a little bit better. All right. So just keep on doing this until I get the creature the way that I want him. Then go back to inflate and inflate along the sides. Now I'm just gonna kind of randomly try and blend some of the ridges in here. And I think this is going to, it's going to definitely make those not look like eyelashes, but it's also going to make him look a little bit more like a monster and less like an egg. Okay, I'm going to keep dragging, making more bone ridges, make these a little bit bigger. Yeah, it looks better. This is where maybe using the symmetrical or the symmetry option would have been helpful. And he still definitely looks like an egg. Poor George. So I'm going to try to make him look a little bit less like an egg by creating some more ridges. Again, I'm going to be using the drag tool. So I'm going to try to drag up some more bone ridges along maybe his jawline. And I think that's going to help. And then I'll switch to between drag and inflate and the brush tool as well. Those are the three main ones that I'm really using for this creature. Let's see how I can make this look a little bit better. Remembering that the clay that is highlighted is the portion that I'm working on. Yeah, that looks better. I think I chose the right angle, the one side, maybe not this side though. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, George is starting to have some promise here. Let's see, maybe underneath here. And if you're finding you're not getting that perfect angle, again, it just takes some practice. Don't be discouraged. It's okay not to get something right the first time. It's actually, making a mistake is actually how we learn. It's a really good way of figuring things out, of trial and error. Unless you go skydiving, then you definitely don't want to learn by trial and error. But something like this is pretty safe. So if you make a mistake, the worst thing that happens is you have to redo it. It's not a problem at all. Yeah, George definitely does not look like an egg. He is definitely looking a little bit more like a monster. Until you look at the back, of course, and then he looks like an egg. I don't know if you've ever read the book Egbert. Egbert His story about an egg. It's actually a pretty cute picture book. I recommend it. And I kind of want George not to look like Egbert. So I'm just going to transform and resize him with those square boxes and maybe rotate the mouth a little bit. I can make it a little bit longer. Yeah. And you'll notice that if I go too big, then he kind of pokes out at the eye socket. But, I mean, I could fix that as well. Ooh, rotating it actually makes it look very monstrous. I kind of like that. So if I do leave it here, I'll just have to fix that one area at the eye socket. I do want to make sure that the lips are out. And I think that's pretty good. Okay, so all I have to do here is go to the brush tool, turn negative on, and then I can brush that extra bit of clay away from the eye socket. And because I didn't merge the two objects, it makes it really easy to get rid of the one without affecting the other one. And some more bone ridges here. The teeth are actually looking pretty good. When I moved the jaw, they didn't separate, so that's good. So I'm just going to make this look like this, and I'm going to get rid of some of this here. Try to make sure that I don't get rid of the lips. So I'm just going to go really slowly, take a little bit at a time. Nice small radius. George is looking pretty good. Let's see if I can make the tongue look a little bit better. Just gonna smooth it down with the smoothing tool. I still need to get those extra eyeballs too, so I do need 4 eyeballs. So I'm gonna go and under scene, I'm gonna add another sphere. And then remember, I need to now transform so that I can move it off of there. And I need to make it obviously really small. And then just like the teeth, I'm going to make one. I'm going to get this the size that I wanted, make one, and then I'll copy it and create the other ones rather than having to do this 4 times. But again, also like the teeth too, I'm going to change them up a little bit so that they don't all look exactly the same. And then I just want to make sure that, again, because it's hard to see in a 2D environment where you are exactly on a 3D object. I just want to make sure that I am in the right spot. And if you're having trouble with this part, do remember that this isn't the first time that I've tried this. So it does take some practice. And so that part that that's kind of flat, that would never print on that eye stalk and doesn't really look like a very good eye stalk, I can actually cover up with the eyeball. So that works kind of perfect. Yeah, I like this. There. And then basically we're going to draw the eyeball the same way that we drew the other eyeball. So we're going to use some familiar tools such as the Crease Tool. And using the Crease Tool, we're going to draw the outline of the eye socket. Make sure symmetry is not checked on. I think it's going to be easier to draw it without it attached to the eye stalk. I'm going to have symmetry on this time so that I have a symmetrical eye socket. There. And then the brush tool, turn off symmetry, increase the radius a little bit. Negative features off. And there's my eyeball. And then I'm going to draw a crease around the eyeball just so that it looks a little bit more, again, just a little bit more pronounced so you can see it. This will help with 3D printing. Definitely help if you decide to paint it after you've 3D printed it. I'm going to just smooth it down, and I'm going to make kind of a ridge around the eye. Just a small one though. I don't think I'm going to do the same thing with the horns like what I did with the, the big eyeball, because that wasn't really a part of the picture. But of course, it's your monster. However you're doing yours, you can do it any way you'd like. So maybe some little ridges, just little tiny ones. So, because I definitely don't want these to look like eyelashes. So little tiny horns. I think if I put some behind, it'll look a lot less like eyelashes. And no matter what, I can't seem to make this not look like eyelashes. Change the rotation just so that I can see a little bit better. And then I'm going to go to the brush and increase the radius. And I'm just going to raise it up behind here. And then try and give the... Actually, that doesn't look too bad, even if they do look like eyelashes. That looks okay. See if I zoom in a little bit. Increase here. And then I'm going to try and give it a little bit of texture. So this is turning on skin on the texture. And really, this isn't going to create a huge difference when you 3D print it. But if you 3D print it and paint it, then these little tiny imperfections will actually show up in the paint. But when you 3D print it, you won't see this. But if you're not going to 3D print it, you're just kind of creating this as a 3D image. It does look pretty cool. So I do like doing this when I create my monsters. If you're looking for a book series that has monsters in it, then the Goosebumps series is a pretty fun series to read. There's another good series too called Haunted Canada by Joel A. Sutherland, and his newest version of it is out called Screamers, which is also really good, and it's good for, I would say, 12 and up. And Screamers actually was recommended by R.L. Stine, who wrote Goosebumps, which is kind of cool. Using the Crease Tool, I'm going to give this eyeball some bloodshot eye sockets here. It's going to look like it's hasn't been sleeping very well. So then now what I want to do, once I have the eyeball kind of the way that I like it, is I'm going to copy it. And the copy is actually underneath the original, so you have to use the transform tool to move it. There you go. Now it is moved, and I'm going to put this over onto the eye stalk. Rotate the eye a little bit. There we go. Very creepy. Oh, George, you do not look like an egg anymore. Yeah, I like that. Move this one over, down. Attach it. I think that worked. I'm going to copy it again. And the last eye stalk. See, it can be really difficult to judge it in a 2D realm when you're drawing in 3D. So just orbit around, just hold down your right mouse button and orbit and see where it is. Move it a little bit at a time. And now I'm just going to rotate it, I think. Nope, actually, maybe I'll leave it like that. Make sure you save as you go, which I haven't been doing, because it'd be terrible if my system crashed right now and I lost everything. George would be very upset, because the last saved version of him I have is him looking like an egg. Now I'm just going to make some little tweaks. Now that you've made all the tweaks to your monster that you want to make, and your monster looks however you would like it to look, you can tune in next week to find out how to save your monster as an STL file, how the 3D printers at Richmond Public Library work, and also how to 3D print your monster. And I will show you a finished version of George, not only 3D printed, but also painted. So thank you very much for tuning in to Richmond Public Library's Make a Monster to 3D Print program. I hope that you had a lot of fun. Please keep trying ScultGL, see what else you can create, and enjoy your day.